And if you could just introduce yourself.
I play keyboards in Alice.
My name is Anna Maria, and I am the founder and vocalist in the band Vajra.
What was the initial start?
Yeah, so we all have pretty storied histories.
I was just bored during COVID. Did a little demo, put it out, and it was pretty well received by the community. And
always had a thing for horror punk and stuff.
Something that started with me and a laptop during quarantine, and just like, oh yeah, you know, all those times I said, if only I didn't have to work my job all the time, and now it's like I could have time to do that. Well, now this is that.
All right, and if you could just introduce yourselves to the fine folks at home, I'd really appreciate it.
I'm David Phantom from Evelyn's Casket.
I'm Ben. You can call me Biff. Also from the same
It's
band.
nice to have you guys on here. I wanted to say, as we get this going, I've been a fan of your guys' music for about a year now, I believe. I kind of ran into you guys on accident through a compilation record put out by We Are Horror Records. You guys had a song on there, and I heard it, and I was like, oh man, I had to have you guys on here. I loved it. So I want to say from the gate, thank you guys for being on here. I really appreciate it. It means a lot, and I'm looking forward to this.
Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for having us, man. We're stoked to do this. So, yeah.
All right. So let's start by talking a little bit about the history of your project. How did this all start, and what led up to this?
We were in another band together called Hades Machine. And when COVID happened, the axe kind of got just put on that project for like the foreseeable future, and then it just never got back together. And I was just bored during COVID, and so I just did a little demo for Evelyn's Casket. Did like a little 5-track EP that I recorded at home and put it out, and it was pretty well received by the community. And so I asked this guy if he wanted to be a part of it, just because Ben used to work as a producer, and I just wanted to take it a lot more serious. So I asked him to come be a part of it temporarily.
Yeah, I'm filling in. Well, this kind of started. I mean, you had this project prior to COVID, but when COVID happened, it kind of surprisingly kind of pushed this to being a project.
Yeah.
But when he reached out to me, it was more of just like exactly that. I was bored. Can you help me with these songs? And so this was like nearing summer of like 2019, was it? Or
no,
20?
it was in it because we did Black Light Wall
You're right.
October.
Okay, yeah. So this
2020.
2020, right?
Yeah.
And then he had this song Blacklight Waltz, and so we just kind of kept taking it apart and putting it back together, and then it became what you hear now. And from that, it was more of like, hey, I got a show, you want to play? And I'm like, obviously, I'm not doing anything, so sure. And then it just kind of kept becoming that, like, oh, we got another show, and then it was just like, all right, well, we need a bass player, and then that was
he's not here right now.
Yeah,
and then
no.
we got Tanner, and so
who also played with Hades Machine at the time.
Yeah.
Our first like actual show, that was with completely different members when him and I played together first. And then that was more just like, all right, we got that out of the way, and then we were trying to figure more stuff out, and then we kind of called Tanner and was like, what are you up to, man? And then so you ended up getting a show booked for I want to say it was
Bridge City Sessions.
Was it that?
Yeah, it was Bridge City Sessions. That was our first show as like an official.
Right. So this was live on, or semi-live, I guess, on the interwebs. And we just were asked to play 5 songs, so we just like breeze through them, and then there that was. But leading up to that, we were trying to hash out these tunes, and it just kind of started making sense, with this guy, with Tanner. And
But funny story though with Blacklight Waltz, it was like a test for Ben because I like purposely tried to write like the most boring, lame song I could to just see if he really could, if he was like telling the truth, essentially. And yeah, he ended up making one of our like most iconic songs out of it. So
Well, that's pretty
yeah.
cool. I've actually seen footage of that, the live show you guys are talking about. And I think that's really funny, by the way, what you're saying about the test. I've been in a couple of bands myself, and I know that feeling when you're like, do you really? So I think that's kind of cool that you guys have that kind of cool relationship. But I saw footage of that live show that you guys are talking about, and that was the second thing that like made me interested in interviewing you guys is on tape. I've never had the privilege of seeing you guys live. Hopefully that'll change someday. But on tape, watching you guys, you had such a cool presence and such like an energy like that you were putting out that I hadn't seen in a long time. I used to live in Portland and I used to go to shows like all the time. You guys are in Washington, so you know what it's like. But like you get on the Max train in Portland and there's a show on like every freaking block. And so you know a good band from a bad one.
That was actually filmed in Portland.
Yeah, at the under the, was it under Burnside or where was it?
It was actually like up in a loft, like Bridge City Sessions used to run all their things out of this like loft in the downtown. So it was just
okay. Yeah, it's been a long time since I've been there. The last time I was there was 2012, but I don't know the venues. I don't even know, like the Hawthorne was still there. I played at the Satyricon when it was still a thing. Like that's I'm dating myself there.
I remember that.
Anyways, so yeah, I noticed that you guys were particularly good live, at least in that session. I haven't seen anything since then. But and then the next thing I saw of you guys was you guys were on tour. I believe you were doing a mini like West Coast tour, right? And you had I think it was 5 Cent Freak Show, who I've also had on the show before. Nikki, I love you, man. I thank you for coming on. And I know you guys are working with him now.
The drum head we used for that tour, actually.
Oh, that's awesome.
That has all 3 of the band's logos on it and all that. And then instead of the band name, we had the name of the tour as the big letters on the drum.
Yeah. So I like what's it been like? Obviously you guys have said you've been in bands before, but what's it like being in this band and kind of hitting the ground running and like being able to gain that kind of traction, because you guys have gained a lot of traction really quickly?
Really fun, I would say, but also really hard is another thing, because it's like the hardest part, I would say, that every musician knows about being in a band is you have to like sacrifice a lot of your personal time to do this. And like a lot of us have like a lot of responsibilities outside of the band, but we also like, just comparing to like a lot of people I know, and like this is like no shade or anything by any means, but it's just from what I've heard, we give a lot more of ourselves to this project than most people do. And we've done it all like for the most part completely independently, aside from like Deadly Distribution has like helped us out with like having some like merch stuff made here and there. But I mean, like we've paid for all of our recordings and all that, and then like we've paid for all of our mastering, we pay for all of our promotion, we book all of our own shows, and we don't have a booking manager. That's just us.
Yeah, there's been a lot of out-of-pocket expense to get things rolling with this, but the upside is, which is also kind of a double-edged sword here, is the fact that COVID definitely changed the game from what I personally was used to, and whether it came down to booking shows or just playing shows. So when things kind of came back, I guess we didn't ride the heavy part of that wave, but we definitely got the little ripples from the after of that, just to because people were just thriving on anything, like give us a show, let's play. And then now that when they're opening things back up, we were like, I remember when we played our first show officially back, it was at this venue up here in Everett, and it was very awkward because we hadn't been on stage in a while.
Yeah.
And then we were setting up, we were on there, we were all nervous, but in a weird way, we're trying to play these high energy rock songs, you know, and then there's a bunch of people sitting down on tables, like they weren't allowed to be next to each other. So everyone was like off on the side in chairs at tables, and you know, like just kind of, all right, the next song. It was just really weird. But I think that was the thing, is people really got excited about when things were coming back. So people wanted to come out and do more stuff, and was very open to every and anything we were doing, and which was very nice, you know. And we got asked to play shows pretty much on the other side of the United States, and got to do some fun tours with some other bands out there. And definitely opened the doors for us in that way. So at this point, we're just trying to keep that ball rolling, keep things going with that. Yeah.
Well,
So,
for sure.
yeah.
I mean, it looks like you guys have. You know, I've been following you guys for a little while, and it looks like you guys have successfully kept that momentum going. And you mentioned COVID a couple of times now, and I wanted to actually talk about that because a lot of the bands that I've been talking to have mentioned that COVID was that game changer, right? Like, it gave a lot of bands a chance to sit down, reflect on what they were doing, decide if they wanted to keep going or not. And a lot of the time they were the bands that I've been talking to, obviously, they decided to keep going. So what they did was they did what you guys did. They got their projects going and rolling. They got something new. What do you think it was about COVID particularly what do you think was the motivation there? Was it everyone was just expecting that it would be over at some point, and so they were all just getting ready? Or do you think it was more like we all had too much free time on our hands?
Boredom.
Yeah. Boredom.
Yeah, that's the easy way to say it. But
one thing to like circle back to, and kind of like one thing that we used COVID to our advantage of too, was, you know, everyone was at home. They kind of were just like, it was just like, hey, check this out, because you have nothing better to do. And, you know, we really took advantage of that. Like, before I had these guys back involved, you know, I was doing like acoustic live streams like constantly. Like, I would do those like every single weekend. I would go on, I would talk to people in my live stream, and I would, you know, I'd play. I didn't have a lot of originals back then, but like I would play like the handful of Evelyn's Casket songs I had, and I would just do like a bunch of like classic horror punk covers. Like, I would do like Misfits songs, Blitzkid songs, the other songs, silent horror songs, and just a bunch of like old school horror punk stuff. And I think that like really helped me like get familiarized with the community and all that in that way, and that definitely helped us out quite a bit too.
I think a lot of it was also the ability to push ourselves creatively in every facet you could possibly think of, because if you can't go outside or play shows, like, what are you going to do? So everyone offered these options. So, you know, this guy specifically, like he was just saying, he took to those options. But it also kind of forces you to be creative, like, about everything, whether it's like visually, you know, sonically, or anything like that. Like, whether it's how you approach every new thing that happens in the world via social media or anything like that. You just have, it kind of kept us on our toes, but at the same time, open the doors to being as creative as you possibly can, because at this point, or I should say during that time, nothing was discarded as a bad idea. And I think that scared some people, you know, because they were so used to doing things a certain way that when it came down to like, all right, well, we got to do something. If it didn't kind of fit into the mold that people were used to, they scrapped it and were like, nah, I don't like the idea. We're not doing anything. Let's just wait this thing out. And it's like, we all kind of got in the same position. We looked at each other and we're like, you know what? If we wait too long, nothing will happen. You know, nothing could happen. And it's, even if things get better, we're going to be stuck with nothing. So we might as well be doing something.
Yeah.
And
I knew a lot of people who just gave up when
Yeah.
COVID happened. They were straight up just like, COVID killed rock and roll, old man shit. And
And
it's called it quits.
man.
They just called it quits till things opened up again. And
I don't know. A lot of bands stayed neutral, but I think that is a good thing because it allowed them to still be relevant, even though they weren't really doing a whole lot. But as long as you didn't stop, because too many bands I saw stop like that, man, and it was a bummer because this was a very uncertain time, but at the same time, it's like, well, all right, you're a musician, like, don't just sit at home and, hey, here's a link to my GoFundMe. It's like, no, dude, get out there. I mean, you may not have to physically get out there, but there's all these options here that we just got to try. And I mean, a lot of people I've known tried and it didn't really take, but they still looked at that as a way to build towards their next thing, and they're still doing stuff. And I appreciate like all the things that we were asked to do, even though a lot of things didn't take off, but we got asked to do other like live performance things we did. And it was like, okay, that was cool, but it kept us busy. It kept them busy. And, we were allowing ourselves to grow as a band, which I feel during that time, I mean, we're talking like 3 years of uncertainty, and we were able to grow closer together and write what we felt we were maturing as a band and getting better at our own craft, because I don't think it's fair to say like we were dominating this scene or we're doing so much to that. It's like, no, we're trying to always outdo ourselves. We don't want to ever outdo our friends or our friends' bands. We want to be like, we did good last year, let's do better this year. I don't want to just keep, flatlining that, so it's like that allowed us to definitely push our own talents to try to do better and like get better at, at drums, because it's like I had nothing but time. So, like,
that's one thing I could say too. Like, if you like look at music as like I gotta be better than so and so, or like I gotta outdo my friend's band or any of that, like you won't go anywhere. Because like as an independent artist, if you make enemies and you like look down on your peers, like no one's gonna like you. And when no one likes you, you don't get given opportunities or any of that. It's like no one wants to help you. No one gets stoked for you when you act that way. So yeah.
Oh yeah,
it's like it's hard
for
enough,
sure.
It's like music is frustrating. It's a very demanding grind, and it like costs people, some artists everything before, whether they make it or they never make it. Like I don't even consider us making it in the slightest yet. It's just like we have a pretty good following, which I'm very grateful for, and it's awesome. But it's like I'm not like buying a house. I'm not paying my rent with this or anything. I'm just having fun. I get to like, thankfully, like we have enough fans that they support us just enough to be able to like move on to the next thing, which is awesome. Because like a lot of bands, they just put out that first record and they're like, okay, well that didn't do well, so I guess this is it. Bye guys.
Yeah, for sure. I've got to say, as an artist myself, and I've as the people in the show know, I've been talking about this throughout different episodes. I've also been working on music. We're focusing on Evelyn's Casket tonight, but I completely understand what you guys are saying about keep going. Like you just have to keep those steps going. I understand what you guys are saying about how like you can't make enemies, right? Like for one, like I don't think anyone wants to, but like people get jealous and they get petty and they get stupid and they act immature because like people are successful when they're not. When the truth is that no one knows why people connect with music, but people do connect with music. They connect with a band for one reason or another. And you can learn a lot from your peers. You can learn like what's working with them. You don't have to compete with them. You should always be competing with yourself and trying to do better, like you guys have been saying. And I don't know. I feel my experience since I've been trying to like kick everything back off and get going again has been very positive. I've noticed a lot of people taking the approach that you all have taken, which is just be kind, be genuine, like reach out to people and like, obviously like your time is valuable and everything, just like everyone else's, and it should be respected and treated that way. But like if someone has a question and they need help, like I've seen firsthand in this scene in particular that's a really common thing. That didn't used to be when it was the early 2000s and I was like into like more skate punk and stuff like that. People were not kind. They were not kind, to say the least. Same thing when we were doing all the post-hardcore stuff and everything. People were like ruthless, and it was not a good time for any of the bands. And to be honest, it just felt like everyone was tearing each other down. And so no one got any traction. Whereas I see now people working together, like you guys and 5 Cent Freak Show, when you guys tour together, like that builds both of those bands up, and you guys genuinely have a good relationship with them, and it shows. And people like that. They like bands for more than just the music. They like them for, you know, the personalities behind it, for all sorts of things. And I just think it's cool. Sorry for that ramble, but it does tie into what I wanted to get back to a little. Oh,
To be fair, they are Canadian, 5 Cent Freak Show, so it was very easy to mesh with guys who are always constantly positive to the point it's almost making you sick how nice they are. And you know, yeah, I'm kidding, but
Just him. He's the only one.
Yeah,
he's the only one. For sure, for sure.
All those guys. And like what I'm at, like I got to give props to like our buddies in Ghost Waves and Darker Days, especially. Like they're pretty much the same band. Like Ghost Waves is just 3 guys in Darker Days, but like they've helped us out a ton. Like anytime we have anything new out, they fucking share it. You know, they're always hyped for us. They always have great things to say about us and to us. And you know, they made our whole East Coast tour happen. Like without them, that tour would not have been able to like go through, because like they provided the gear, they reserved the van, they did all that. They, you know, me and Nick booked that whole tour together and all that. And I can't just only give props to 5 Cent Freak Show, because like the Cemetery Youth crew, the Cemetery Youth crew is Evelyn's Casket, 5 Cent Freak Show, and Darker Days. And so yeah. Those are our homies. Like I will always help those guys out when they need it. So yeah.
For sure, for sure. So I wanted to talk to you guys a little bit about playing live, because we had mentioned it earlier about how, like, I felt that you guys, at least from the video I had seen, you guys have a very strong live performance. When you were preparing for that show, or when you are writing music in general, do you write thinking about live performance and like the order of songs that you might perform them in? Do you know what I'm saying?
So when we're writing them, I wouldn't say the order we'd be performing in is necessarily in mind. Like, because when we're writing them, we just want it to be a good song, like that we feel good about. And then another thing too is like, because there's things we can do, and then there's the things we can perform. And so we always got to like find that proper balance to not go over the top when we're writing a song and like we're recording it. Because like if you're recording it, it's like, yeah, fuck yeah, I could have like the craziest, most face melting guitar solo here and push myself to the limits. But it's just like I also want to be able to like play that comfortably when it's live. Or, you know, like sure, I could sing really high and do all these like crazy yelling and screams and all that all throughout this entire song. But it's like, if we do that, like a good example is like why we never play In the Night live, is that song is just like screaming at the top of your lungs. Like
we used to.
We used to, but it's a set killer. Yeah. It's like when we play that song, it's like my voice is toast, and it's only like 2 minutes and 15 seconds long, but it's so much like yelling and like just in a high like octave for me personally the whole time, is that when we go to do it, it's just like as soon as the song's over, it's just like I can't fucking breathe. Okay.
In most cases, sure, we write songs because we have ideas that we want to get down on paper. It's hard to assume like how this is going to transfer onto stage. We kind of worry about that later because, you know, just like that. I mean, we have a lot of stuff in that's kind of stored away right now. We've been wanting to work on, but it's a matter of like dissecting and, you know, just moving stuff around to make sure that we can pull this off, that it would translate on stage, and that we're not gonna, I don't know, we're not gonna put ourselves in a weird position that we can't, you know, perform properly. Especially but when we write, you know, our set lists and things like that, we tend to cater because we're not, we do understand the concept. When we're on stage, we're entertainers. We're there to entertain, and we want to put on a show. If we could, we would do every little piece of light, sound, visual, everything we can, because I mean, respectfully, like that's what, we call a show. That's what you go to
Mhm.
see. It's like, yeah, I like seeing bands play, but I also want them to perform. I want them to look like they're enjoying themselves. And it's like, we love playing on stage. So we go up there, we have a good time, and we want you to feel that. And if it means sometimes just throwing our shit around and like bleeding on stage, I mean, that just proves that we enjoyed it that much. Cause it's like, I don't know, sometimes you got to leave something on stage. And if that can be just a memory for people, so yeah, we try our best to do that, and I don't encourage any and every band to like hurt themselves on stage, but it's like I encourage everyone is like, no matter what, you better treat this show like any other show, go out
Mm.
and give it till it's all gone, and then you should be leaving that stage sweating or bloody one way or another.
Like if there's only 3 people, you should give it the same energy as if there was like 500 people. Like, because like you're gonna leave an impact to whoever's there as long as you did well.
Mm. Yeah, that's really true.
Yeah. Well, in my opinion, that's part of doing well.
Yeah.
Yeah, because like I've never been like, because like you can see when a band's not having fun on stage. Like, you can see it. It's just like they're like slashing their shoulders, or they're like checking their phone in between songs and like shit like that. It's just like,
I'm sure you can look up YouTube and just type that in and find a dozen like different performances where people are beating each other up because they're just pissed on something. And it's just, like, why even be in a band? Why even do this? It's like, I'm not on that stage just for me. I want to be there with this guy. I want to be there on that stage with those people playing in front of these people, that want to be there for that too. So it's like, why put yourself in a position you don't want to be a part of? It's like, it's not lead, bass player, drummer, even guitar. It's like, we're all in this together. So it's like, everything you do represents us, everything I do represents them. And it's like, and we have to make sure we always, perform at the best of our abilities, but with each other in mind. And I feel like we've always had that high respect for each other, because we're not getting completely shithoused and going on stage and just, screwing around. It's like, we want to do this. We want to do it right.
Mm.
We want to have fun. We want the audience to enjoy this, So, I mean, I've seen bands play where it was a colossal shit show, and it was kind of funny, kind of fun at the same time. But they also, that was what they were. But then I've also seen good bands do that, and I'm like, oh, I just wasted all my money on this. Like, what just happened? And the last thing I'd want to be is to like make these guys look bad because of my antics or my bullshit. It's like, there are times I've literally just destroyed my drum set on stage, but it's like, I warned you guys beforehand. I'm like, if I'm getting turned on, that shit's everywhere. That's just kind of how it goes, because like, I can't help it. I have such a good time. I'm leaving this all on the floor, and
sure.
yeah, that's kind of how it goes. So.
Well, that's awesome. When sorry, I'm imagining it now. When you guys are going to
go see it.
when you guys are going to write that set list, right? How do you I know you guys have quite a bit of experience playing live. So what do you think makes a good set list and a good flow for a show? If you were any band on the bill, what would you be trying to build your set list to look like?
We base it off, we compare it mostly to like the other bands playing that night most of the time. So like if we're playing with like a bunch of like hardcore and metal bands, we'll play our faster songs for the most part throughout the whole thing. If we're playing with like a lot of like rock and roll bands and all that, we'll play our like slower songs and whatnot. Or if we're in like a real mixed bag of a show, we'll have like a mixed bag set and whatnot. So like, honestly, like that's how I've always like felt how we do it. That's just the gist that I gotten from it. And then like we always try to like start strong and end strong too. That's another thing.
It also depends on when in the night we are playing. Like if it's like a 4-band bill, it does depict, the people and the interest. Like if we're headlining, all right, we're gonna work together on a headline set. But if we're like opening a show, you kind of have to assume, well, not everyone's there to see us, so we can't just play like for an hour. And especially if we only have like 30 minutes, we don't want to play right up to 30 minutes. the idea is to just play our bangers and make these people want more, and get right off. It's like we're gonna get up there, play a few songs, we're gonna get right off. So they go, wait, what was that? This guy, what was that? Like we want people to want more of this, and that's really the trick. I mean, if you want to call it a trick, it's just like, I mean, as much as we enjoy ourselves, there's going to be more shows for us to entertain our own needs, but like we're there to like entertain this crowd, but that may not be our crowd, so we got to make sure we win them over, and we don't want to bore them or like play a bunch of songs like when they're just like, we're not here for you, guy. It's like, okay,
Yeah.
I want to change gears a little bit, and I want to start talking a little bit about how you guys actually write the songs you write. One of the things that I've noticed is that while you guys definitely sound like horror punk, you don't sound like a clone of any band. It stands out in the crowd. It's not like some of the bands that are in the scene, you can go, oh, that's like a Misfits clone, or oh, that's an AFI clone, or whatever. But you guys sound like Evelyn's Casket. You don't sound like other bands. And so what I'm curious about is, where do you guys think that comes from in the writing?
Well, I think a big part of that is we don't specifically look to the horror punk scene for our music influence. We take influence from like a lot of things we like outside of horror punk. But I mean, there's definitely is some, like, I know, like, one thing I will say is we get compared to Blitzkid quite a bit. Which is fine with me. I love Blitzkid, but my favorite comparison anyone's had for us is we sound like angry Blitzkid. And I was just like, cool. All right. Yeah. I'm just fine. But like, there's like, I would say like one of the big things we take a lot of influence from is me and Ben like fucking love Alkaline Trio. That's like one of our favorite bands of all time that we like to take influence from. And then me and Tanner listen to like a lot of like thrash metal and like doom metal and stuff too, and we take elements from that we like, and we like mix it in with our other stuff.
Yeah,
but
Tanner is a big metalhead, like
yeah,
like he's into, if you can't read the name of the band, he loves it even more. It's like it's obsessed. He is like the metal reverend that we reference if we need to get some insight on that end. This guy specifically like was more of the horror punk connection for me and Tanner, because for us, we were, we come from different cuts of cloth through that kind of heavy music scene, if you will. So
like a good thing, like a good example to like bring up like Blitzkid again was like we played with them just about a year ago from today, and I was like, guys, we got on the Blitzkid show, I'm so stoked. And Tanner was like, who?
For sure. Yeah, like I think about that sometimes, about like when people think horror punk, what are the bands they think, right? First one's gonna be Misfits, probably Samhain or Danzig, and then they may go AFI, and then most people, even if they're like into punk, they like, maybe they'll get Blitzkid, maybe they'll get Balzac, maybe they'll get Calabrese today, but like that's pushing it, right? And I think that's so interesting because you have so many talented bands, especially right now in the scene, that are coming up that are just phenomenal. And I think some of them are starting to get like noticed and a little bit of, a little bit of push that way. But I'm digressing. Sorry. But yeah, I hear what you're saying. I'm really surprised about the Alkaline Trio. Not that like I actually really like them, but like it's interesting to hear you say that, because I know a lot of like a lot of horror punk guys, they like kind of dismiss them in a weird way, and I don't know why. Their songs are killer, but like it's a weird experience I've been having.
I know a lot of people, there's a good chunk of the scene that likes to call Alkaline Trio horror punk, but I've never felt that way, like ever. They just have really dark, like undertone stuff, and like, they have like very like sad topics they sing about, and yeah, they're spooky too, but they've never once been like, yeah, we're a horror punk band.
Yeah, they do. They very much do not lean into that idea. There were times where they would dress a little bit on the spooky side, if you will.
Yeah.
But it was more for just pictures, if anything, because if you see them live, they look like they just walked off the street and kind of grabbed some instruments and started playing, you know. But that's kind of, at least that's our common medium, though, because like I mean, horror punk in general, like I knew of just a few bands that I would classify in that when I kind of got more involved in that scene. And for me, it was just I'm a punk kid from back in the day, you know, when growing up in the 80s, there was just like, you know, I listened to a lot of that early stuff, and then I gravitated to try to progress to other things. Like when you were talking about the early 2000s and skate punk and stuff, like Strung Out was like one of my favorite bands, and I used to listen to a lot of rock and roll stuff, dude, like Rock from the Crypt, one of my favorite bands. But these were also guys who were either punk band, you know, originals or just punk influenced in some form. And that's kind of where I came from. So it's like for my input into this band was more, I think what kind of helps, but I mean, I'm not trying to toot my own horn, but it's like we got one guy who's very into that like genre as well as those kind of like imagery in that scene, and then you got like me who's like more from a different background but still punk, and being punk kind of connecting the two, and then Alkaline Trio is like right in the center because it kind of it literally did appeal to both sides because they had a lot of really good range. And so there was a lot of stuff there that we bring to the table when it came down to songwriting and just everything that we do. So we try not to say we're going to be like Misfits or be like Calabrese or be like, you know, Blitzkid or something, but we definitely take elements from this because this is stuff we listen to, you know, and that's just how things are when you write songs. It's like there's going to be stuff that sounds like this or that. There's really nothing new under the sun anymore. But having said that, it's like that also is what pushes us to be different because we want to make sure we don't sound like what you've heard. We want to sound different. You know, we strive to. Every band strives to be different, but also unique, not just different. You know. So
Yeah.
And then you got Tanner, where he's just like, I don't listen to any of this, but it's all easy. It's all easy to play, so that's cool with me.
Nice. And it's funny because it sounds like we're putting him down, but to be fair,
not at all. He's,
you know, well, to be fair, because he literally has been the catalyst that's kind of held a lot of this together. Because the fact that he's so easygoing, and for being a metal guy playing bass with this music, it's like you wouldn't know it, but I mean, he looks like he's loving it, like on stage, because he is. He's in the moment. He's having a great time. And you say, "Oh, you probably listen to this." He'd be like, "Nope." Like, I listen to a bunch of this other crap that you've never heard of. Like, but that's why we love the guy, because he is a unique dude, and he helped like just be the presence that we are. So
Yeah. I've thought for a long time that like when metal guys decide to, you know, be in a punk band or help write in a punk band or whatever, I've always felt like that adds something a little bit special, like to the mix. And I know you talked about liking doom metal and things like that, but no, I like in all seriousness, there's something about like, I think it's because in the metal scene, a lot of the time they value like technique and they value like precision in things like that. Even in thrash, there's like a degree of it where it's like you got to hit the riff at just the right time and be tight, and they care a lot about that. And I think that helps. I think that helps punk bands in particular, because sometimes punk bands they get a little sloppy, they get a little loose. But you get a metal guy in there, he's like, no, we're gonna like, you know, we're gonna hold it down, we're gonna keep it tight. And I've always said punk rock isn't an excuse to suck, right? Like just because you're playing a 3-chord song, play it tight, play it good, play it to the best of your ability, doesn't matter what it is. So like hearing you guys talk about that, it's just really interesting, because I agree with you that like, I guess it's not really agree. It's interesting that you say that in order to sound like you pull from outside of the scene to make you sound like you. And I really like that. I think that there's a lot that people could learn from that, because, you know, there's a time and a place for like clone bands or cover bands or whatever, but that's a lot of the time I feel like you should be learning, not to diss any band that's like openly proud of that. I've actually interviewed a couple bands that were like, no, we want to sound like a Misfits knockoff. And I think there's some really cool people. They've got really great music, in my opinion. but the bands that are pushing the genre forward, they're pulling influences from metal, they're pulling it from folk, they're pulling it from all sorts of weird directions. And I think that's really cool that you guys, if it's conscious or unconscious, I think it's cool that you are. And I think it's interesting that you guys recognize that that's what gives you that kind of sound. It's kind of focusing a little more in though, when you guys are actually go to write songs, what is the process behind the instrumental writing? Like, how does that look?
Oh, this is my favorite thing to explain. So
Not mine.
there's no real like rhyme or reason to it, because like a lot of the times is like I'll just be like working on something, and one of us will be working on something. But most of the songs that we've released have started with me just like working out, like really bare and stripped down on an acoustic guitar, and I'll like record it and I'll send it to Ben and Tanner, and they're like, all right, well, let's mess with this at practice. And then we'll get to practice and I'll be like, okay, well, I got this, and that. What'd you think of that, Ben? He'd be like, oh, that was cool. That was cool. But yeah, it fucking sucks. It's bad. I'd be like, oh, okay. Well, what would you do? And he'd be like, oh, well, I would do it like this, and that. And then this way. So yeah, what'd you think of that? I'm like, oh, that's bad. I fucking hate it. And that sucks. And then he'll just be like, well, fuck you. And it's like, well, this, and that. Well, they're like, fuck you. And the whole time Tanner's just like standing there just chilling, and then by the end of it we're like, this fucking rules. It's like all high fives. We're just like, fuck, we made something sick. Fuck yeah. But
well, that's cool. It sounds like it's like a real collaborative effort with you guys.
Oh yeah, well, we're both just like really passionate and like really into it, and like when I explain that, like it can sound like we don't get along, but it's like very far from it. It's just like the writing process is like really intense for us because we're all just really passionate about it, and we really want to make sure this is not a waste of our time.
For sure.
Yeah, but there's no real like the most like biggest like say like, oh, like real idea going into writing a song I could say is just like, oh, like, well, let's just like try to write a slower song or write a new fast song or write a very dynamic song that goes back and forth. But there's no real way, like at least in my own experiences, like I can't just force out a song. It's like it literally got to like just come to me, and I got to like break it down and like, all right, what's this? And then we expand on that. And like I feel like that's just really the most common thing for any artist or band when they're writing a song, and like, just what it comes out to really just comes down to what you can do and what influences you to do it.
So what would you say are when you're writing the lyrics, then is it a similar kind of process? Like, how does that happen?
So when I'm writing lyrics, usually how it goes is it always starts with like two lines that sound really good next to each other. I'm like, oh, that's catchy, that's cool. And like I could just be just driving around, just like singing over something else and just like brainstorming, or I could just be at work and then I just I write it down on my phone real quick or type it down in a notebook app, which is like really handy. Like if any artist doesn't have a notebook app in their phone, like you should get one. Yeah, so you can just write down your ideas really fast in there or type them, whatever. But yeah, that's just usually how it starts, and then I expand on it, and then I kind of just mess around on my guitar until I find the right chords for the melody. And like sometimes we'll have a topic or whatever. It really just depends what my headspace is in at the time. Like if I saw like a really cool movie I liked that influenced it, or if I'm like going through some life things that like help influence that and whatnot. It's like a lot of our songs, like we only really have like comparing ourselves to like a lot of other horror punk bands, we only have like I think like 3 or 4 songs that are actually based after a movie. All the rest are like pretty original topics and stuff like that. So like that's something we just don't usually do. Like I think there's like Pumpkinhead, which is about Pumpkinhead, and there's Return of the Dead, which is about Return of the Living Dead, and then actually I think that's it. I think it's just.
I mean, if you will, Circuit Freak is.
Oh, Circuit Freak. Yeah,
not really a movie, even
that's
though it was a movie.
Yeah, that's a book series.
Right.
Yeah. That's like a book series I loved when I was a kid.
Yeah,
and that's what that's about. But I think those are the only really 2, 3 like that are about like any sort of like film or story. And then Evelyn's based after like a real thing that happened. And then other than that, everything else is just kind of like
Always Hollow was kind of,
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
Always Hollow's about
Yeah.
the Legend of Sleepy Hollow.
but not directly one particular movie. Although there was that video that kind of references that
Oh, yeah.
movie. But yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
it's just about the story of that. But yeah,
Yeah, I was gonna say that particular song goes really hard. You guys did a really good job on that one.
yeah. I think lyrically though, like, I mean, this guy's written the lyrics for everything we have so far. I mean, the songwriting has been kind of has been mostly a collaborative effort. And I say mostly, if you will, like out of 100% of the songs, we've had a hand collectively in about 90% of them, where the 10% were the ones that were already written, and all we did was just maybe change a little whittly here or there, and that's not really much of change. It was more like, oh, now he's playing it, or whatever.
Yeah.
So it's like there wasn't a lot to stretch on some of that, but I mean, the beauty with a lot of lyrical content in this genre, it's like it's almost insistent. That you got to write about something creepy or horrific. It's like, yeah, but isn't that like every song? Like, no matter who you are, it's like it just depends on your perspective of the listener. I mean, like something that's even happy can be not terrifying, but can definitely be traumatic for someone else. So technically, it's like our interest of getting out there is what we find interesting, what we find, like what he was saying, in the time and the headspace that you're in, but as most of all, just what we find most passionate, because it's hard when you see people that gravitate towards horrific imagery and darks, like anything like that, like in those kind of categories, but they only delve into that. Oh, it's Halloween, so let's start, throwing blood on everything or whatever. It's like there are people out here, this is kind of their life, like, and it's not because they're disturbed people, it's just they like this stuff, like it's okay to like this stuff, it's okay to have preference to this. It's just, we're just another band that's kind of giving a soundtrack to it.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One of the things that I've talked to a few artists about when they've brought this idea up is that I think there's a comparison to be made between horror punk and blues music, in that blues music, like real good blues music, is super depressing. It's like if you're really like into it, it's super soulful. It's like it's that dark place, and you can feel it in your core, and people kind of resonate with that when they're, or metal, right? When you're having a really bad day, sometimes you really resonate with that kind of music, or when you're having a good day, whatever, it's just something to vibe to. But like horror punk touches, because of the how much extra it can be in the visual sometimes, like people with the blood and the gore and whatever, people are like, oh, that's creepy, that's weird, whatever. No, there's nothing wrong with that. It's the same thing with blues, it's the same thing with heavy metal music. When you're listening to it, people connect to it because they're feeling, whatever. It's not that they're disturbed, it's that whether they're angry and they need someone to relate to, or whatever, they have that they can hear, and they can go, oh, there's someone else out there that feels like a freak like me, or whatever. Maybe that's what they're going through. Maybe they just had a rough day and they want to like thrash out to something, so they'll throw a fast song on, and it like connects with them. So I think what you're saying, like, there's a lot of truth to that. And I really, it's cool how like insightful a lot of the bands in the scene are. Like, just audience at home, from like an outside perspective looking in, there's a lot of, whether it's knowing or unknowing introspection, there's a lot of thought that goes around this kind of stuff, because there are people out there that are genuinely not well sometimes, and like maybe this shouldn't be for them necessarily if it's going to be the thing that pushes them over. But for almost anyone else like that would listen to this kind of music, they're people you work with, they're people that you see like at the store, whatever else. They're just like anybody else, and you wouldn't know. I'm married, I've got a good paying job and do all that, and I love this stuff. I love horror movies, I love horror books, everything like that. So yeah, anyways, to get back on topic, like I completely like relate and resonate with what you're saying there. I think that's really cool that you recognize that.
Yeah, it's hard to say that this is, this isn't, you can say that about any genre of music. It's not for everyone. But
Hmm.
what we're doing or what we're trying to do is to have music, this particular music available to everyone. Like there's at least something there that everyone can pick from. But ultimately it's like, do you like heavy fast songs or do you like slow, melodic songs? It's like we definitely cater to one side than the other. So it's like, yeah, this may not be for you, but you weren't looking for it in the first place. So, if
Right.
you're gonna say, if you're gonna say you're into punk music, it's like, all right, we're probably gonna be right in some form in your alley. Like you
Mm,
might as well listen, or at least try to, because anyone that says stuff like that, oh, I like hard rock, I love metal, I love punk, it's like, yeah, we can fit into that some form or another, because we're at least listening to that. We're a part of that too. So we want to at least be respected all the same, and accepted all the same in
mhm,
those fields, because we want to be um we want to be at least available in that way, because we enjoy this. We try to present that on stage and in on our music, and we want to make sure people just kind of, if you like it, great. If you don't, then obviously, move on. It's like,
mhm.
this is what we got, this is what we do.
For sure, for sure. So let's talk a little bit more about writing though. So you mentioned earlier that you actually are a producer. That's like how you guys kind of connected to like work on all this stuff. Um, how important do you guys feel as like artists and you as a producer? Like, how do you feel about recording quality and things like that in punk music? Do you think it matters? Do you think it doesn't? I've had people say that they feel it's really important, and other people say, "Nah, just hit record and let's go." So I'm kind of curious. I feel like you guys have good quality recordings, and obviously, I think a lot of people would be like, "Hey, I want to present my music in the best way possible." But I'm just want to get your feelings on like production and things like that.
This day and age, I'll first say this day and age, it's way easier to get music into a listener's, grasp. But the thing is, punk band or not, it's like, if you got to decide what you want. Do you want people to listen to your music, or do you want to just get this out? Like, if you don't care, then neither do they.
Mm,
But if you do care, then you need to make sure that you show that you care. Because it's just like a job. If you're going to apply for a job, you're not going to give them a resume with a coffee stain on it.
mm,
Like, you want to present this to someone that's going to accept you, and it doesn't have to be the most expensive or the best looking or the most extravagant. It just needs to be presentable, and that could be anything. It could be like raw. Like, when I first heard Gloss, which I don't know if you have or haven't. It's like,
mm.
it was a band that lasted just like a couple years, gained a huge following, and then just died. But it's some of the most raw, like, lo-fi recording you've ever heard. But they got millions of plays. They're so widely accepted. That I don't want to get into the history of that band, but it was like, my kid showed me this, and it was just like, oh wow, this reminds me of, back in the early 90s, listening to bands on the 4-track recorder. And it's just like, there's some nostalgia for me, but at the same time, it's like, if this quality was on a band that was trying to be like Alkaline Trio or something more polished sounding, like that's more insistent on being a more professional band, I would discard it and not listen to it. It's just because, like, there is a time and place, there's a vibe, and then there's interest in that way. So you kind of have to play to your audience, really.
Mm.
I'm not a producer, but one thing I will say is, like, if there's no nostalgia for me attached to that, like, recording, if it's not something I like, some punk band I loved in high school or something, like, these days, if I'm looking for new stuff, if I turn it on and it just sounds like shit, like, if it just sounds like you recorded it like on your laptop, like, and I don't mean like on a DAW on your laptop or anything. I mean, like, if you just like recorded it with a laptop microphone or like your cell phone or something, I will just skip it. Like, I do not want to hear that. Like, and
Mm,
that's just me. And I'm not trying to be a jerk or anything, but it's just
mm.
like, if it sounds bad to me, like I don't want to listen to it. Like I like bands that are in key. I like bands that are harmonized together. I like bands that play to a click track. Like I like polished stuff. And it's like you don't have to spend thousands of dollars to get that sound at all. You don't have to spend nearly that much money to have something presentable. But it's like if you send me something like that and I'm listening to it in my car, it's like my whole car just sounds like low end, or it's just like straight treble, and it like your guitars sound like someone left their sync running, and it's literally just like hissing noise. It's just like I do not want to hear that, and I will just skip it. And like that's just me. Like because I consume a lot of music. Like I try to find new music almost every day, and I'm sorry. Like I'm sorry if I offend anyone with that, but it's just like if that's
No,
what
no,
you want to
I
do,
mean,
that's awesome. Like more power to you, but I don't want to hear that. Yeah.
no, for sure. I'm personally in agreement with that. But the reason I wanted to get it is get you guys like talking about it. For one, it's your interview, but also because people that are actually in the scene talk about that kind of thing. Because there's sometimes there's this idea, or there was this idea that can kind of hang over that like it's less authentic or whatever. And I don't buy that. I don't believe that. I think that if you really care about your music, you would take the time to like bring it up, even just that little extra bit. If you can, then you should. Like I said, I'm a firm believer in punk rock is not an excuse to suck. If you're playing three chords, then play them tight, play them well, write a good song. And speaking of like all of that, awkward transition, I'm curious, do you guys care at all about things like music theory? Not consciously when you're writing, but just like, do you care at all? Because you mentioned like staying in key and stuff like that.
So I was always told there's like two types of musicians. There's the musician who knows music theory and he's like gone to school for all this stuff and he studied a lot of it. And then there's the musician who's just learned so many songs by other artists that they've just caught on to what works. And I'm the latter. So I've never had any musical training whatsoever. Like I've never had like any like vocal lessons or any of that. Like I've never had any like hands-on ones. Like I've looked up exercises and I've been given like pointers on things I should go look into. The closest thing to a guitar lesson I've ever had is one time this guy taught me the blues pentatonic, but that's about it. But I don't know, I just kind of like observe songs that I love that are really popular, and then I'm just like, well, it's kind of like I'm not like stealing that structure and those chords or anything, but I'm just like, this works here and that sounds good. Kind of thing,
It's like the difference between book smart and street smart.
Yeah.
Like it's you can apply that based off the person, and like I was the same way. I grew up just wanting to play any and everything, and I got involved in a punk band and I was playing bass and so I wanted to get better at bass, so I did everything I could to get better at bass, and I still sucked. And then I wanted to be able to play and do everything. So I was like, anytime I heard new music, I was like throwing it in my CD player. Anything I was doing, I was trying to grab music. And it's one of those things that I think the one thing that will always kind of be the major testament to any musician or band is the number one question is, what are you doing this for? Like, are you doing this for fun? Or are you doing this because you want to make a career out of it? Because ultimately, you can ask a lot of people, they're going to say, yeah, I'm good just doing this in my garage every day and recording my own stuff and no one hears it. I don't care. It's like, that's great. But then there's the guys who are like, I need to be on stage or else I'm going to be like standing in the street corners, making a fool out of myself. It's like, or whatever, I need a stage to perform on, or I need to sell my music. I need to make a living out of this.
I wouldn't say making a fool out of myself. I think street performers are pretty.
Oh, I'm not talking about street performers. Sorry. I meant like just me going out like in the middle of the street and just screaming and yelling at the top of my lungs for no reason, just. Yeah, I making a fool of myself in public, other than on stage. But either way, it's like it's just the kind of like drug that some people have when they're musicians. They need to be performing. They need to be on stage. It's like when like circling back to COVID times. It's like this writing music was great and all, but it's like, well, what are we doing this for? It's like we're doing this because we want to play this to you people. Like we want to play this out. So it's like the way we learn, the way we operate, it's like ultimately it's all about getting to that end point. That's what we want to do. So I don't know. Is that answer?
Yeah, no, it's great.
I'm not gonna say that music theory isn't important or anything, but it's never, I don't think it's necessary to like start working as a musician in any way.
Oh no,
Like
for
just
sure.
yeah, it's like I'm sure it helps, but I don't think it's necessary. And I hear it's really easy to learn. Like once you when you figure it out, it's like, oh yeah, that makes total sense. But
I will say this: if you've got a niche, if you can play and you can play with people, that is the biggest thing. Because some people just can play really good, but they can't play with other people for some reason. Like
Yeah.
it's a thing. People just can't seem to like mesh with other people, and it's just those social skills and being able to communicate and work with other people is the biggest thing. Theory won't teach you that. Going to school for music won't teach you that. It's the only way that you can get taught that is by actually, hey man, you want to play music? Let's jam or let's do this, and then you kind of figure, I enjoy this. Let's start writing songs. I enjoy that. Let's get a show. All right, we love doing it. Let's take this on the road. It's like it's a building block to that. But I will say that if you want to excel at your instrument, you want to like be really good, then yeah, learn. Keep learning. You can never not learn. You can never not learn enough. Like you can go beyond and far beyond. Like just keep learning how to master that instrument, because everything else is going to be on you, on your personality to get what you're doing out there. So it's like, so in the sense of musicianship, there isn't really one good or bad. It's just how you want to utilize it, in my opinion.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, that's really cool. Thank you guys for sharing all that. Let's talk a little bit about we talked earlier about your guys's, tours that you guys have been on. On those tours, who are some bands that you guys have played with that you feel deserve a little extra attention? Who are the bands that you liked, who are, or are going to be playing with? Who are the bands that you like that you would want to shine a spotlight on if you had the opportunity to do so and be like, hey, come check out these cool guys. We played with them,
Oh, I definitely got to give a shout out to the writers on that in front, because they are such a unique band. Like they're like the Dead Kennedys and the Cramps smashed together. I think it's like the best comparison to them. Like anytime I turn someone onto that band, I tell them like, have you heard of Jello's new band? And they'd be like, what? Or not Jello's, I'll be like, Jello's son's band. Like I always say that, like, yeah, this guy is Jello's son from Dead Kennedys. They're like, no way. And I show them and they're like, dude, he sounds just like him. And they're just like, oh, and I'm like, yeah, I lied to you though. Yeah, it's not Jello's. He doesn't have to sing. But these guys are dope. You should definitely give them a chance.
They're definitely the most unique form of dudes to perform. And I mean, from what we were talking about earlier, it's like when you get on stage, you give it all you got. I mean, they personify that mantra.
Yeah.
I've never seen anybody have more fun than those guys when I watch them play.
Oh, yeah. And they are like,
they're so fun.
Everyone in that band is an insanely good entertainer. Like you're never not having fun watch that band. We're not having fun when you're watching that band. Like they put on a fucking show.
Yeah.
And they give it everything. Like they are dripping sweat, they're animated, they're cracking jokes, they're telling stories, they're setting the mood, it's just like.
But that is their show though. It's like, it's not like you're just going to get a mesh of crap. It's like, this is what they do when they perform.
Yeah.
That is their show. That is all of that, which is great. Yeah.
Almost ripped the camera down.
Yeah. I mean, our boys in Darker Days is another one. 5 Cent Freak Show, definitely. Like.
Oh well, that's a given. We've already given them shout-outs. I mean, like we toured with those.
Yeah,
guys,
I know.
So we obviously like them.
So it's like, if we're talking, it's hard to say because we played with a lot of bands that were like, that might have been their last show, like, and a lot of just because it was more of like we found ourselves playing with a lot of people when we toured with other bands that were just having fun. And so it's like, as much as I appreciate that, it's like it's not worth promoting. No offense to any of that. It's like We
Oh,
want to
yeah.
see bands that are doing it.
I definitely got to give a shout out to Digos. Those guys fucking,
Yeah.
they put on a really fucking great show. So I just had to like look around at the show flyers, just like a quick reminder.
Zoonoids is a good one.
Oh yeah, the
They're-
Zoonoids, they were
yeah,
killer.
based out of
Yeah.
Chicago. I mean, I wish we got to hang out with those guys more. They're a great band, especially if you're into the Alkaline Trio kind of vibe. They're very much like that. But yeah, they're a really good band. Really good band.
Oh, let me
Yeah.
cheat wall again.
Well,
Make sure I'm not forgetting.
I mean, if you get a chance, I mean, if you're talking like our local scene, I mean, there's a few bands around here. Spirits is one of them. We really like those guys.
Raw Dogs,
Raw
those guys are
Dogs, hell yeah.
killer. Freaking Life Rips, Generation Decline. So like, oh, Potbelly, those guys fucking rule. Like they're like veterans in the like Washington or PNW in general, just hardcore scene. Like they're the most like straight up like anti-racist, freaking anti-establishment, like anti-capitalism band ever, and they're just like angry front to back. A lot of it.
Awesome.
I feel like we're missing something big here. I can't even think of it. I don't know.
The Coffin Cats, of course, those guys are.
Oh, yeah,
set out
yeah,
to
yeah.
play with them. And then
I mean, I don't know. I mean, I feel bad because I know there's a lot out there.
that's a tough question because there's so many people to like shout out. There's been so many bands that have stood out to me just on the road and whatnot.
That's awesome. It's good that you guys have that kind of relationship with all these bands where it's like there are just too many and someone's going to be mad because they didn't get the shout out.
Yeah.
But like to be honest with you, like I think that can only be a good thing when you made that many friends that you're like forgetting who to thank, you know, and who to like shout out. Whoever it is that they forgot, they love you, I promise.
Yeah.
That, you know, like all that like in mind, I have to say, if you guys ever made this tour happen, I would lose my shit. I would love to see this. I would love to see you guys play with Blitzkid, Darkest Days, Die Ghost, and Dark Ride. Like if you guys got that bill going,
yeah, Dark Ride. Yeah.
like it would be amazing.
Yeah, we would love to tour with all those bands, you know. We would do it, you know, because most of like, to be fair, we've asked most of those bands already, you know, if they want to do it, and then, you know, most of the time it's just, you know, it's not really in the cards because
Yeah,
a tour is like easier said than done. There's a lot of like planning and preparation that goes behind it, especially when you guys live on like opposite coasts of the country.
yeah,
And because it's like everyone's just like, why don't you ever come to my town? It's like, well, just getting it going is like a few $1,000s of investment just to be able to start driving somewhere. Like it's not cheap. It's not easy to do, and like you don't always make your money back when you go do those things. And so it's like we would love to go do that. And it's like, but we don't, you know, we're not a giant band, so it's like we can't just go do that. But would we love to? Absolutely. If the opportunity came, would we take that opportunity and do it? Fuck yeah, we would. Yeah, we'd
Awesome.
fucking love to. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I'm putting the good vibes out there. Hopefully someday that can be a reality because man, I would love to see that show.
Where are you based out of? I don't actually know that.
Oh, so I've lived all over the United States. Currently, I'm living in just
far.
nowhere. I am my horror punk scene. It's just me. That's
Is Spokane near your territory, or I don't know how close that is to you. I've been trying to get out there. Dude.
No, I'm in southeast. Southeast. I'm in the corner.
Yeah, we were supposed to do Boise on our last tour, but we all caught COVID the first night.
Yeah,
we had to cancel the whole tour. So
yeah, sorry to hear about that.
Yeah, hey, you know it happens. That's just another thing to bring up when it comes to touring is you risk that, and like we're just the kind of band where if we catch COVID, we're not going to just keep doing the tour, like spreading that, like regardless of how you feel about that. Like even if it was just like we all have like the flu really bad, it's like we don't want to give that to people, you know. We don't want to have that on our conscience or be the band that people are like, oh yeah, well they got everyone sick or any of that. It's just like
No, for sure. I really respect that. My wife has an autoimmune disorder. Won't go into the details here, but whenever a band makes the choice to do that. They're sacrificing money, they're sacrificing potential new fans and things like that, but they're doing it to keep people safe. I have a deep respect for that, because you never know who's going to be in that audience. And so it's a really responsible thing to do. So, on behalf of people with relatives and stuff like that kind of go through that, thank you guys. I do appreciate it.
That's appreciated to us, because some people get really mad that that's the reason we bailed out, and it's like, well, fuck you, dude, you're an asshole. So.
For sure. Before we head out, where's the best place for people to come find your guys' music?
Everywhere. We're on YouTube, we're on Spotify, Bandcamp, Apple Music, Tidal, whatever you stream your music on, I promise you we're on there. So you can just type in Evelyn's Casket and you can find us there.
Well, I just want to say to the people at home, go listen to their music if you haven't already, and make sure that if you can buy a physical copy of their music, or if you can buy merchandise, please go ahead and go and do that. Bands, we have this talk almost every episode, but it is important. Bands create art because they love it, but they also create art as a job sometimes, or in a small way, it can be a job. And the more serious a band takes it, the more that kind of takes over. And it's hard for bands to keep going if they don't have fans actually supporting them. You streaming absolutely helps. Go stream it as many times as you can. But get out there, buy a patch, buy a pin, buy a hat, go buy a CD or a vinyl, record, whatever you can, buy that thing and bring it home with you, because, those little things are the funds that keep the band able to move forward and able to write new music that you will like and love. So that's my little soapbox. I just wanted to say that before we take off. Again, thank you both for being on here. I really appreciate you guys taking the time. I had a wonderful experience. When I have people on here, I treat this like it's my home, and I treat the guests I have like they're guests I've invited into my home. And I judge the people that I've had on this show based on my interactions with them. And I've got to say, I have not been disappointed yet. And I definitely haven't been with you guys on here tonight. You guys are super down to earth, have been very open and forward with everything, and I really appreciate that. So thank you guys again for coming on, and you guys keep killing it. All right,
thank you. Thanks, brother. You too.
All right, thank you so much for staying to the end of the episode. I really appreciate it. My name is William Hamilton, and I've been the host of this episode of Heartfelt Horror here on the Heartfelt Horror Media Network channel. We really do appreciate you guys staying to the end of these videos. While you're here, if you wouldn't mind leaving a like on the video, subscribing to our channel, leaving a comment down below, these little things really do go a long way to helping us, get our name out there and get our show out into the algorithm so other people like you can find us. So if you wouldn't mind doing that, we'd really appreciate it. Also, if you're looking for other ways to support the show, we have a Patreon. The link for that is going to be down here. You can copy that into the search bar and you'll find our page. Our Patreon is for $5 a month. For $5 a month, you're going to be able to help us buy all sorts of new equipment. You're going to help us be able to save up for different kind of developmental processes that we're going to be using to bring you new and different kinds of content besides these interviews. So if that sounds like something that interests you, please consider it. Again, it'll be $5, and the link to the Patreon is going to be down there below. So thank you so much for your time, and have a nice day. Bye.